Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Now in our today's lecture, we're going to talk about the course that we are offering to you on CSS. In our today's lecture, we're going to talk about what is CSS, why do you need CSS in website development, what significance does CSS have when it comes to web development, and what is it used for. How can you use it? And then we will also discuss that what are we going to be learning throughout this course and what are going to be the learning outcomes of this course. We are also going to talk about what kind of softwares do we need to add CSS to our HTML files. So without wasting any further time, let's begin. All right, guys. So now let's first talk about CSS. Now CSS is basically, it stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it is used to edit your HTML files. Now we have already learned that how can you create an HTML file, and basically how can you add all the headings, all the images, all the videos, all the content in your web page. We have basically learned that through HTML. But now so far we haven't really learned how can you design your web pages. So everything that is related to the design part of your website or your web page is basically done through CSS. So CSS basically is going to help us design a website. It is going to help us make it look good. It is going to help us add colors to the website. It will help us position things on the website. It will basically help us do everything that is related to the design part of your website. Now, it is also going to help us change the layout of the whole website, or not only change, but to create a layout of the entire web page. Now, as you know, when you add something in HTML, either it stacks on top of each other, or either either the tags stack next to each other. Now, CSS helps us create a layout. Like for example, if you want a specific heading or a paragraph or an image to be at a very specific location on a website, you can pretty easily do that through CSS. So CSS is basically going to help us create that layout that you want on your web pages. Now, talking about the uses of CSS. Now, why do we use it? Now, there are many uses of CSS, and we are going to use it in many different ways throughout this course. But over here, I have just listed a very few of them. Now, the first one is going to be, it helps us modify and beautify your HTML files. So by modifying and beautifying means that you can change an HTML tag in any way you want. You can increase or decrease the size of those tags, size of those images, size of those headings, size of the paragraph, your videos, anything. You can basically increase or decrease the size of anything. You can increase or decrease the font size, for example. You can do everything basically regarding the modification, and it helps you beautify. Obviously, when you design a website, you add colors to it, you make it more interactive. It basically becomes more appealing. So it's definitely going to help you beautify your HTML files. And then it also helps us basically design your own web pages. Now, we know how to create a web page using HTML, but CSS helps us basically design those web pages. So everything that is going to be related to the design element of your website is going to be done through CSS. And as we already know that it helps you basically create the layout or control the layout of the web pages. You can basically put anything anywhere on the web page. You can basically position anything using CSS as well. Now, what will we be learning throughout this entire course that we have? What are going to be the learning outcomes of this course? What will be covered throughout this course? Now, we're going to cover basically each and every element of CSS that you're going to need. Either that is how to add colors, either that is how to add positioning. Now, positioning is something we are going to spend most of our time on, because positioning in CSS basically can be done in many different ways, and you need to know that what is the best way to basically position something. So that is also we are going to discuss in a lot of detail. Now over here, I have listed a few points basically that says that make each tag appear on your website as you desire. Now that is basically very important. When you have a heading, when you have an image, when you have a paragraph, some bunch of text, anything that you have on your website, you can basically make it appear like you want to make it appear. So you can basically add styling to it, you can add colors to it, you can add borders to it, you can do everything you want basically using CSS. And basically you will learn how to add a style sheet in your website. Now style sheet basically is basically two tags on your web page that helps you add all the CSS code there. So there are many ways to add the style sheet. There are internal style sheets, there are external style sheets, there are inline style sheets. We're going to discuss all of them one by one, and we will see that what is the best way to add the style sheet on your website. And you can also see at the last point it says learn to add external style sheets. So again, we will basically discuss each and every way of adding a style sheet to our HTML file so that we can edit it, or we can modify it, or we can beautify it in any way that we want. Now after that, You will also learn how to add colors to your website. Now you can not only add colors, just you can basically add colors in many different ways. For example, you can have a color for each section on your website. You can have a background color, you can have text color, you can have a multicolor background. Like, there are basically ways you can mix 2 3 colors together and you can use it as your background image, or you can use it as your background color for the container or for a section on your website. So there are many ways to add colors, and we're going to go through each one of them. And then again, it is going to help us create a page layout. And then the page layout basically means that each web page can have its own layout. Like, you can't really just add one layout and expect it to work on every single web page that you have on the website. You can actually control that. You can add a specific layout to each of the web pages as well. And most importantly, this is the most fun part, that it helps you add animations in your website. So CSS basically is going to help you add animations. For example, you can add a bunch of blocks on one side of your website, and they can just randomly animate and form something out of them. And on you can basically do a lot with animations. You can do color changes, like your website can change colors after every few seconds, or there are endless possibilities basically how you can use animations in your website. So we're going to learn how can you add animations and how can you basically animate your website if you have to. All right, guys. So now CSS basically will help you add background images and gradients in your HTML files. Now, this is quite interesting because what CSS can do, it can basically help you add a background image as basically an image that goes behind your entire website, and then it can help you add gradients as well. Now, gradient is basically a mixture of different colors that you can add in your websites. There are many ways to add it, and we will discuss all of them. Now, it not only helps us add the background image, but it also helps us size the background image, fit the background image, and make it appear as we want to make it appear. So we can basically do anything using CSS. Whatever comes to your mind, you should be able to design something like that using CSS. So now it also helps you create buttons using CSS. Now, buttons are very important, as you know. Now, in a website, you need buttons for many different things. You need a button if you want to make a sign up form, you need a button. You have many different buttons for many different purposes, and CSS helps you create those buttons. Now, it doesn't really help you just create the buttons, but it can help you customize that button in any way you want to. And it can also help you add animations to your button. For example, what happens when you bring your mouse over that button? What happens when you click that button? What happens after you click that button? So everything can be basically controlled using CSS. And lastly, I think this is the most important use of CSS, that it helps you create navigation bars. Now, if some of you don't know what is a navigation bar, then on the top of a website, whenever you visit a website, you will see a bar on the top that says about, home, contact us, some bunch of links on the top basically. And when you click on those different links, you land on different web pages. Now, the thing is that that one bar helps you basically connect all those web pages, and CSS can actually help us build that bar. Now, it doesn't only help us build a static bar, but also a drop down bar. So you can also create drop down menus using CSS as well. So moving on, now let's talk about the benefits of learning CSS. Now, whenever you're basically making CSS, you can basically create faster website. Now, faster website, it doesn't really mean that you can increase the speed of the website necessarily, because that is not done through CSS. There are many other ways to do that, but faster website basically means that it helps you connect all your web pages for easier access. So you can very quickly go from one web page to another web page. You can click on different links. Everything is very clear. It is basically very easy to navigate through the website. Now, CSS basically helps the website become a little more, actually a lot more interactive, depending on how you have designed it. It can help you create astonishing websites, astonishing designs. It can basically help you beautify your website and customize it in any way that you want to. And this obviously enhances the user's experience. Now, if you're creating a website using HTML with some black and white text everywhere, some bunch of images, and basically no styling to that website, then that website won't be really interactive. It won't be too much appealing. Now, what CSS does, it basically helps you navigate through the website. It basically adds interactiveness to the website. You can basically control, like, for example, if you have animations going on in the website, when you bring your mouse on top of the things, they basically help you interact with you. When you bring your mouse on a button, maybe the color of the button changes. So everything is a little more interactive and really fun to use basically. So CSS is definitely going to help you enhance the user's experience on your website. All right, guys. So now if we talk about the outcomes of this entire course, now CSS is basically going to help you in many different ways. Over here I have just listed a few outcomes of this entire course. Now if you think about it, then HTML helped you to create a website, and that was pretty much it. Obviously this is an integral part, but it is also helping you to create a website and add content to the website. Now if you think about it, if you get a task of building a website, then the person who wants you to build the website will have some kind of requirement, some kind of design requirements, how they want that website to basically or to come out basically. So in order to fulfill those requirements, you need to learn CSS. In order to design that website, in order to basically fulfill those design requirements, you need to know CSS. So HTML, CSS basically together are going to help you start your career as a front-end developer, or basically just start a career in front-end development. Either that is web application development or website development. It is going to help you in both of those ways, basically in both of those fields. Now it is going to help you create websites which are supported by all devices. Now this is one of the most important parts of learning CSS. Now if we talk about let's say 20 years ago, now the thing was that back then we didn't really have the concept of smartphones. So the websites were made according to a desktop or a computer screen size, which are relatively a lot bigger than a mobile phone screen size that we are using these days. Most of the time you're just opening a website on your mobile phone, on your smartphone. But back then we didn't really have smartphones, so developers didn't even think about that. They just used to build a website that would basically work on your desktop screen. They were not compatible with your mobile phone screens, your tablet screens, because back then we didn't have anything like that. Now, after 2005, when all of these smartphones were basically introduced, now the first problem was that when you open a website on your smartphone, the website is not really built to support that screen size. So you would basically just see a very zoomed in layout of that entire website. You would just see a zoomed in screen, and that wasn't really appealing. So now what CSS helps you do, it basically helps you adjust your website according to every single screen size. So if you open your website on a desktop, it's going to look basically it's going to fit perfectly on a desktop. But if you open it on a tablet, you can use CSS to make it fit perfectly on a tablet as well. And same goes for a mobile phone screen as well. So CSS is going to help you basically make your website compatible with every single screen size as well. So this is a very important use of HTML as well. Now CSS is basically going to help you start fully developing and designing front-end websites. Now examples of front-end website would be, you can create a portfolio website, you can create some kind of any kind of static website, an informative website, any website that basically provides information about something. You can fully develop it, fully design it using just HTML and CSS. There is a whole lot of market for this, basically for just HTML and CSS developers. It is also used in email developing these days. So there's a huge market just for HTML and CSS developers as well. So this is basically going to help you start fully developing, designing. Developing part is going to be done through HTML, designing part through CSS. You're going to combine your knowledge, and there you go. You're going to be creating front-end websites in no time. And this is exactly what we're going to learn throughout this course, that not only we're going to be learning about CSS, but also how can you combine your knowledge of HTML and CSS together to basically create a front-end website. And every day basically we will be creating a new web page. We will be implementing what we learn so that we can basically learn it through the most practical approach. Now it is going to help you attain full control over designing websites. Now this basically means that once you are basically have created your website, you can design your website in any way you want to. Whatever the requirements are, or whatever comes to your mind, you can basically implement it on the screen. However you want the things to be, however you want to design that web page, you can pretty easily do that using CSS. And we are going to learn all the concepts of how to position something, how to add colors, how to add background images, what are the different ways of positioning, how to add borders, every single thing, how to add text editing, every single thing that you can possibly do through CSS. We are going to be learning that as well. So now moving on, now let's summarize what we have learned so far. So the first step that you're going to do is you're going to learn how to use CSS. Not only learn, but you're going to learn how to implement your knowledge on CSS as well. How to combine your knowledge of HTML and CSS together to create and design your websites. Now, your second step is the most important step that you're not going to forget to practice and flourish your skills throughout the course. So throughout the course, whatever you learn, make sure that you try it out in your own ways, however you feel like trying it out. Make sure that sit down, open your Visual Studio Code, open your text editor that you're working on, and just basically try out the things that we learn throughout this course and try them out in your own ways so that you can have a clear understanding of how everything works. Make sure that you play around with it and make sure that you try out our assignments because they're really going to help you practice everything that we are going to be learning throughout this entire course. Now, finally, if you do that, then you're pretty much ready to create amazing designs for your website. You can basically create a website and design it in any way that you want. You can basically create astonishing website designs for your web pages, for your web applications, for your websites. So that was all for today, guys. So now before we wind it up, I just want to discuss that the software that we will be using for this entire course is going to be Visual Studio Code. We already were using that in the previous HTML code as in the HTML course as well. So make sure you check out that course if you haven't already, because in order to work with CSS, you will need knowledge of HTML as well. So now in the next video, we will basically be discussing that how can you use the visual, how can you download the Visual Studio Code, how can you add CSS codes in your web pages, how can you edit your HTML tags using CSS as well. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.